So tonight we're joined by Richa Kaul, who's founder and CEO of Compliance with a Y, Compliance with a Y, not with an I, which is an AI native governance, risk and compliance platform that recently raised a $20 million Series A led by Google Ventures. Richa describes herself as a data privacy nut, perhaps the kind of person who will ask you if you have locked your phone down properly, switched on your two-factor authentication, all that kind of thing. I jest, but she actually appears to have stumbled upon her startup journey with this sort of idea about journeying from this idea, and the best way to actually protect consumer data is to help secure the enterprises that hold that world's data. And that became Compliance, software that uses AI agents to help companies continuously monitor risk, compliance, and third-party vendors, etc., turning what used to take weeks or months into something much closer to real time. And dare say in a few years' time there'll be compliance people on the street asking for some spare change after her startup. So tonight we're going to talk to her about her founder journey, how she spotted the opportunity, why AI has suddenly pushed risk and compliance front and center into the boardroom, and the clever strategy that she used to raise funding, and the big question hanging over the software industry right now: is SaaS dead, or is it being rebuilt around AI agents? Richa, welcome to Pathfounders. The privacy setting at parties, is it a true story?
It is a very true story, and not just at parties. I will go around and ask my friends and family if their privacy configurations on their phone are up to par all the time.
Right, you definitely are that person then.
I am that person.
Marvelous. Must be a riot at parties.
I am. I think it's good for everyone to be a little bit safer. That's all. That's where this all kind of started.
It's a good conversation opener, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Some people are a little startled when I tell them to go to settings on their phone and open microphone and look at which apps they have microphone on for. But if you do it, you will be surprised. It'll only take you a couple seconds and you'll be more secure for it.
I think people are actually starting to do that. I've just seen somebody do that.
You want to know why you get ads about things you talk about? It's because your microphone is on for a bunch of apps that you didn't know.
So are you saying that rumor about Facebook and listening to you all the time is true?
Just look at your phone. You will see it.
Mark,
your microphone is turned on. Why is it turned on?
Mark, we love you wherever you are.
Turn that off. Turn it all off. It's literally all on. And for what? So it's actually a real tip. Do the same thing with camera. I actually can just leave now because that's all that I actually wanted to do here, everybody, is let you all know that one thing.
We don't want you to leave right now. We want to continue the podcast. And so what happened to you? Did you have this sort of little kind of idea about privacy? And because tell us a little bit about your personal story. You know, what you've been doing. Tell us a little more.
Yeah, I'm happy to. And you know, it's funny. I think it really was a personal start to Compliance with a Y. One of my very good friends was part of a really big data breach that happened. It was the Equifax breach, which happened now a number of years ago. Some of you may remember it. At that time, it was big news because obviously there weren't as many data breaches as there are today. Today, I feel like that type of breach may not even hit you guys, hit your news feeds because there's breaches all the time. But it was the first really big breach that happened that made a lot of people kind of feel concerned that their data was, you know, not necessarily being kept as safely as they would want it to be. And there's no breach shaming here, as I like to say. Like, it happens. You know, if you have the right security policies in place, there's still things that can happen. But I think it was the human impact of it that really got me. One of my very close friends had their identity stolen because of that breach, and it made me kind of think about, you know, why is it that this can happen? Like, how is it that we as consumers are, you know, almost required to trust so many companies with our data every day? Just think about it. You would have to be a hermit to actually not give your data out all the time. But that data is so valuable, and you know, the breach of it has such an impact on each of us. And I started thinking about it as, you know, the best way. Again, I began by saying, okay, I'm going to get my stuff in order. I'm going to get my configurations ready. I'm going to get about my passwords, do all of this stuff. Then I started telling my friends. But you kind of get to a point where you realize that the most efficient way to protect consumers is actually to help protect the companies who hold the world's data. And that is literally how Compliance with the Why was born.
So you were Chief Strategy Officer at Contract Pod AI, you worked at McKinsey.
Yes.
Lots of McKinsey-ites become entrepreneurs, I've noticed. And so did the problem pull you into entrepreneurship, or had you always wanted to become a founder yourself anyway?
I literally did not ever think I was going to be a founder. Up until 2 months before I started the company, I did not think I would have become a founder. It was really a pull from solving a problem. It was really an analysis of a market. And honestly, a little bit, it was something where I knew I was passionate about the problem, and it felt like something that I could never do. And that was intriguing to me. I kind of felt like I'm young and I should try to do something that I don't think I can do. And it worked.
Right, so for people in the room who are not GRC governance risk compliance experts, let's hear what Compliance with a Y is in plain English. What does it do?
Yes. First, I want to say, compliance gets such a bad rep. Not compliance with the Y, compliance with an I. Everyone thinks it's boring, but I just am here to say compliance is cool. Compliance is sexy. You just have to figure out why it matters.
We actually went through a period many years ago on a title I was on where we came up with SaaS is sexy, or
that's more believable, I think.
Yes,
yes.
I know it didn't quite land, but anyway.
No. My point is that compliance is really what enables us to trust the world around us. If you think about what GRC teams do every day, they are basically focused on creating trust with their organization's customers and protecting their organization. And that's really what it comes down to. They think about all of the different standards that they have to comply with to make sure that their customers can trust them. That can be security standards like SOC 2, like GDPR. They think about the risks that are posed to their organization and how they can mitigate those risks so that we can trust them with our data. They think about the policies they have to put into place to make sure that their teams actually stay aligned to those different rules and controls. And at the end of the day, that makes us be able to trust them, and it protects them.
So give us a picture of how it's done at the moment and what the radical change is going on right now because of the rise of AI.
Absolutely. Let me give you an example and something that I think we can all kind of relate to. I don't know how many of you all have been in an audit before, any type of audit, right? But if we all have kind of been maybe around some type of audit before, had to be pulled in, asked for, some type of evidence or something. If you think about what compliance used to be, it used to be point-in-time checks of your data to check if you're compliant. So what that means is, you might say, okay, I want to make sure that every employee has antivirus installed. Okay, well, what are you going to do about that? You're actually, in the way that it used to work, you would go around and say, I'm going to check 10 out of my 1,000 employees, and if they have it, that's good. That's a sample size. I'm fine with that. They're checking 10 out of 1,000 at one day in 1 month of 1 year. And that's how compliance used to run. You kind of set these policies, you had to trust that everyone followed them, and there was no way to do enough follow through. Just thinking of that one example, which is just one tiny part of compliance, what we do now with agents is complete and continuous monitoring. We're always making sure that, yes, you're not being exposed to risk because everyone in your organization has antivirus turned on. And they have these other configurations on as well. And that's what basically automation plus AI actually enables us to do every day. It gives you visibility where you had none, and it gives you risk reduction where before you were really exposed.
And how is this moving into sort of the agentic era as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's think about one more example. One of the biggest risks to enterprises right now is their third-party vendors. So again, we talked about breaches. As a company, you trust your vendors to keep your enterprise's data safe. Well, you can't really monitor them all the time. They're not your internal environment. You have no idea what's going on over there. But AI agents can do a lot of that. So we have AI agents that monitor third-party risk. So they can basically go in, they make sure to ask the vendors the right questions, they continuously monitor those vendors. Any sign of risk, they flag it to you so that you can reconsider what data you're sharing with that vendor, how much you want to share with them, how you're going to interact with them if you want to work with them. And that's fully agentic. Before you had no coverage on that.
Okay, I mean, but can these vendors spoof things in some way? Can they? Is it almost like a sort of cyber war scenario where they're trying to come back with, spoof the agent into believing everything's fine?
There's no one agent to spoof in that way. Like, the agent is kind of omnipresent, I suppose, looking at hundreds of data sources, thousands, millions of sources of data at one time. So
Right.
there's no one way to spoof it.
You're covering all bases, basically. Yeah. Now, what about this aspect about AI surfacing the kinds of risks that perhaps companies weren't previously aware of?
Yeah.
You've said that AI has brought risk and compliance to the boardroom.
Yes.
What is going on there?
So I think the first thing I'll say is that AI has made risk and compliance a language of everybody. I think that, before, again, unless you're involved in an audit or have worked within an organization that's gone through a number of audits, you may not have quite understood what is risk management. Like, why do I need to care about this? But I think what's happened with AI is that we all more implicitly understand the risks of sharing our data with a company. We put in a lot of information into ChatGPT and Claude. I know I do. I'm sure you all do too. My friends tell me they use it for taxes. They use it for health. they vent. Like, there's a lot of information going on.
Relationships?
Relationships. I mean, you put so much of your personal data in, and I think for the first time we're all kind of realizing, like, oh my God, this is really personal. Like, people are telling me they're upgrading to paid subscriptions so that they can have more protections. Like, these things are becoming the language of everybody, whereas before I feel like they were almost niche points. So just right off the bat, we've kind of all become more equipped to speak in the language of risk. The second thing I'll say is that before, you have, again, sample testing that raises risks across an environment. And you rely on people raising the risk or your sample testing catching the risk. What's happening now is that you have full visibility as a default. So you're not spending your time sampling or searching for risk. You're spending your time addressing risk. And that risk visibility is surfacing the things, and you decide what to raise to your board, but before you had no visibility. And now all of a sudden you can see. And you're spending your time being like, look, we need to deal with these problems, not spending your time saying, I think we're okay, these are some potential issues that we might have. And boards prefer that.
Is that leading to some kind of heads being blown off moments with some of the companies you speak to, going, oh my God, we had no idea what was going on?
I do think so in some cases, yes. I think there are a lot of companies out there who can kind of, I think, benefit a lot from the risks that they can see now, and they can close them before they become vulnerabilities, which is really the main goal of all of this.
I mean, is the size of the market must be running into billions, I guess?
Billions and billions and billions, yes. The market is huge and it's growing. Every company in the world has risk, and we're getting to a point where every company has compliance needs as well. And so, yes, it's a huge market. It's a good space to be in.
And I think, is it changing companies in how they deal with it in terms of governance? They forming special kind of departments now as a result of this, or what's going on?
They have had departments already for
yeah,
it.
sure,
Those
but I mean,
are
different things?
Yeah, those departments are often thought of as the people who nag us. It's almost like GRC people always feel very like they owe the rest of the company because they feel bad because they're always chasing you for something, signing your policy, doing your security training. And so I'm sure you've all been on the receiving end of it. So I think GRC people often feel a bit like, oh no, we're being annoying to our organization. But now with AI, they're spending less time doing that because the agents are doing so much of that manual work, which relieves the work for the business owners as well as the GRC team. And now they can feel more elevated in the org. They're having more strategic conversations. So I think they're getting elevated in a way that they just were not before.
And is it changing the companies themselves in how employees behave? Is it, I don't know, heightening awareness in some way?
So interesting you bring that up, because I think we may be seeing the opposite a bit. A lot of companies are using shadow AI right now. It's a very big problem. What that means is employees, I am certainly guilty of it as I'm up here on my high horse talking about this. I'm so guilty of this. I use a couple AI tools that I know, are not necessarily going through the company's norm. I don't put confidential information in them, but I'm using them. I'm sure we're all using tools as well. And you kind of create a web of shadow AI that's happening because your employees, especially at large orgs, you can't control everything that they're doing in terms of their
software. You mean
they're
putting stuff that's going on inside the company into their personal Claude account?
To do a better job, right? They're doing it for efficiency.
And they want to get a raise.
They're doing it, maybe, yes, exactly. But they're doing it because sometimes their organization hasn't caught up yet. They haven't yet, signed up for enterprise AI tools or something like that. And so they're feeling hungry. They want the benefit. And so they're kind of setting up accounts and they're doing some of these things. And at more mature companies, there's kind of security configurations on the endpoints. But, at a mid-sized company, maybe not. And so you're getting kind of this shadow AI network that's happening, which is a huge risk, by the way.
Is that something how can you have visibility into that?
It's really, really hard. That's actually where you have to rely more on training, more on awareness. And as I like to say, our AI agents allow GRC teams to do some of that stuff because they no longer have to chase everybody for policy signing. So, yeah.
Let's get into your journey as an entrepreneur. Now, you didn't just raise a Series A led by Google Ventures out of the box. Tell us a bit about how you got there first.
Yes, very luckily, I would say. So I think one thing is we've been very lucky to have a preemptive seed round and a preemptive Series A round, which means that the investors came to us and we didn't have to pitch. So I haven't made a pitch deck in a long time, which is a really nice thing to
A lot of entrepreneurs would be quite flabbergasted at that.
I know. And it's a very different model, absolutely. It's a very, very different model. And I'm happy to talk about it a little bit more, but that's the quick story of it.
Well, no, I think you're going to have to tell us now because this is a secret a lot of people would like to understand.
Yeah. Okay. I think some of my friends asked me this, so I'm going to try to break it down the way that I like to share it with my friends. I think it goes back to whenever I'm thinking about the business, whenever I'm thinking about investments, I'm often thinking about what are the incentives for the person on the other side of the table. And a lot of it is based on that. And so if you think about earlier stage investors, of course, their incentive is to invest in a company that skyrockets and does great. Don't get me wrong, we all are aware of that. But there's also something at earlier stage where it's about the vibe, right? I'm going to use a Gen Z phrase that I learned recently. It's like aura. It's like, it's your aura. So if you're an investor, and I know there's some in the room, so maybe you can tell me if I'm right or wrong. As an investor, you also want to get the ins to the companies that no one else got the ins into, right? You want to have access to the founders and to the information that no one else got. Okay, well, that's something that's in our control as founders. That's not we can control that. We can control the supply of information out into the investor market and make sure that we can win on some of those incentives. So the investors kind of network out there is like a grapevine. You tell someone something, I feel like everyone kind of knows it. And it's good, they're sharing information, that's great for them, but we are founders and we need to protect ourselves and our businesses. So the way I see it is that there's a lot out there that you can't control. You can't control when an investor has just raised a fund, how much they want to deploy, what their theses are. You can't control that as much as we want to. But you can control some things. You can control your aura, and therefore the aura that you kind of transitively pass on to the investor when they invest in you. So let's make it really practical. I don't share data about the company with anybody. I don't answer investor emails. When I do, I say, hey, and I'll give you guys the exact word I use. I always say, I'm really underwater right now, or I'm really heads down right now, and I'll message you when I'm coming up for air. That's just what I say. I don't give any other information. I don't take any meetings. And what that does is that no one really knows any of the specifics about us out there. They just kind of know that we're not talking to anyone. And then when someone really interesting comes knocking, that person gets the information after a period of relationship building, which I'll get into in a minute. But when they get the information, they know that no one else knows it because the VC community is like so intertwined.
Because now you're a black box.
Now you're a black box, and they're the ones who got access. And that's already a win now for you, right? Now that's something that you've controlled in the dynamic between you and this VC. You've not given your information to anyone. When you start speaking with them, I mean, this is one person's opinion. I won't say it, but I would say don't go in with the data room prepped and ready for them. That's not how you win on relationship. Go in and understand, they owe you as much as you owe them. Why did you come to me? Why are you interested? What's your thesis? Why do you think that we're going to win? Ask them the questions. It's an even playing field. And by doing that, there is just more buy-in that gets developed. You build a relationship, then you share your numbers and your data once you have also gained the trust and they have gained your trust. And I think that that really changes the dynamic. Way too many founders I know are doing, it's an entire job to just do VC meetings. And they have their data room ready to go, they have their pitch deck ready to go. Why? You have a business to build. Focus on that. I feel very privileged saying all of this, by the way, but it's my personal advice, and it's worked for me now for 2 funding rounds.
Would you say that's more of a Silicon Valley playbook and a lot of European founders kind of get that a little bit wrong?
Very interesting question. I definitely think that it is more of an American playbook, but I actually know, my American founder friends, I don't think are doing this to this extreme. I think it is a bit risky, but it is what it is.
And it is also function of how European VCs tend to go, oh, give me your kind of 2-year predictions, blah, blah, blah.
Yes, but that's not been my experience, right? I think that once you, I think a lot of European founders just go in with so much information that then that becomes the conversation. Like, make the conversation about your vision, make the conversation about you, make the conversation about them, by the way, also, and then share your data and keep in control of that. Like, don't overshare first. It's your business.
AI is flooding the market. There's a new update. Last week ago, everyone said use Claude Code. Everyone said, now move to ChatGPT. I was like, what's going on? So that's at the sort of the consumer end, but also at the business end, we've also got the issue that creation costs are collapsing. You've got big tech, they release a feature. I mean, there's the whole stuff about the Anthropic mythos, which is almost like a marketing play, if you ask me. But whether or not a new feature update. In fact, a few weeks ago, Anthropic released a feature to do with law, and all of a sudden, a bunch of floated law companies collapsed. They did something around design, and Figma's share price collapsed. Yeah. And that's all going on at one end, and at the other end, you've got some teenager in a spare bedroom coding on Lovable and vibe coding, and because he or she is 17, the VCs think they're the next big thing. So what are we going to do? How do you think entrepreneurs should sort of approach this right now? Because it's almost like we're in a different kind of era right now.
It's a really tough question, and I think you almost have to go back to the basics in a time of such change, and it really is a time of such change. I used to at ContractPod do strategy, and I did GTM, and even just removing myself from company building for a minute, I used to know enterprise B2B SaaS GTM playbook like the back of my hand. I could do the math out of my head. I knew exactly how to hire and exactly what to do. That's totally upended as well. I mean, you have to learn everything new. It's not just the company you're building, it's every function within the company you're building. It's how the customers are thinking. Everything is changing. It's a really exciting and really difficult time to be an entrepreneur right now because of that. But my advice is really, you gotta go back to basics in a time of such change. And the basics are, you gotta know your customer, and you've gotta understand the problem that they're facing. If AI is solving part of the problem, understand the version of the problem that they're going to still face. You have to know it, and you have to make sure that your product is addressing whatever version of that problem is left. And it may be a slightly new problem, maybe it's a slightly adjacent problem, maybe it's 80%, 60% of the first problem. I don't know, that depends on you. But it's there's still something that you need to solve for, and you just have to make sure that your product, your solution is actually meeting that problem. And honestly, the basics of PMF, I think, are gonna be what carries us through.
And another aspect of this is that AI native startups, which is what you are also seem to be different to a previous generation of companies. Yeah. You're doing everything AI natively, in your internally as well as externally. Yeah. What's your perspective on that, and what that's done to being a founder?
You know, it's actually really interesting. It keeps us efficient. I just had a board meeting shortly before this, and I was looking at our efficiency numbers like, wow, you know, it's crazy what you can do now these days. You can really focus on hiring high talent density individuals who can really leverage AI to continue to expand the work that they're doing and make more and more impact. It's actually amazing. You know, our sales team looks different, our engineering team looks different, our implementation team looks different. Every function has been transformed based on these tools that we now have. And it's actually crazy. It's crazy how fast it happened.
You're going to have a similar problem to all those corporates who are no longer hiring junior developers, or is that going to be an AI native startup problem as well?
Oh. So before at McKinsey and afterwards, I worked in economic development, which is the creation of jobs, and I worked actually for a state in the U.S. doing that. So this topic hits me really hard. It's a really complex one, and I actually think there needs to be a lot of policy discussions around how we support newer generations of the workforce in this world, and that's an entire conversation in itself. I don't think we're doing a good job right now.
Well, it seems like we're just crawling out of the ocean on this whole subject, and you know, it's maybe even a year ago that this subject wasn't even
true
that front and center, but it just gets more and more, doesn't it?
Or it didn't even exist.
No, absolutely. But let me draw this to the point where you've raised this $20 million led by Google Ventures, and you've now planning to expand. Give us a picture of where you're going next.
Yeah, what an exciting time, honestly. We are really focused on building the next generation enterprise GRC platform that is actually really end-to-end agentic run. I mean, that sounds a little crazy to say out loud, but we are talking agents who can do all of your audit prep for you, agents who can write your policies, get them out there, agents who can monitor your third parties, agents that can surface risk. And we want to elevate the GRC team to really be focused on the whys behind compliance instead of being focused on all of the manual busy work. We got a long road ahead, but it's pretty exciting.
Is that going to change the nature of business in a way that we're not quite predicting? All of a sudden, maybe the heavy lifting, perhaps the EU suddenly gets easier to operate in,
Yes,
for instance.
Very true.
I mean, is that the sort of, I suppose that's a Shangri-La, right?
That's exactly right. And it's actually going to go beyond that. I mean, that to me is almost a stepping stone on the way to really understanding businesses' risk profiles and being able to meaningfully reduce the number of breaches that we read about every day. Because if you're spending all of your time currently doing manual busy work on compliance, you can shift all of that attention to actually dealing with the risks that have been teed up for you. You are now completely transforming your ability to protect your organization and your consumers. And that is the Shangri-La.
Well, there you go. And 5 years ago, I thought the whole thing would be solved by blockchain. And many other people did as well. Richa Kaul, thank you very much for being on Pathfounders.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Hi, my name's Ed. What doesn't scale with AI? You've got 40 people. What isn't scaling?
What isn't scaling? I would say articulation of value delivery to really senior stakeholders. So, and I think that's becoming increasingly important in a world of AI because obviously, as we just discussed, you know, they have a lot of optionality now. Clients have a lot of optionality now to use different tools. They can use Copilot instead of your tool. Obviously, you should build a tool that's good enough that that doesn't happen. But you know, you always need to be articulating the value that you're delivering to the most senior people who are in the room when making, you know, those types of choices. And that doesn't scale. It's really human. In fact, kind of what I've told the team is like, look.
Hi, Richa. I'm Fiona. Chinese court has ruled that firms can't lay off workers on the grounds of AI and replace them with agents. You mentioned that you thought we needed to support people, future generations who are coming into an AI environment.
Yes.
Do you think that's the right intervention, or what interventions would you propose?
It's a really tough question. It is an interesting intervention, I think. I think that right now, trying is better than sitting on our hands. I think that we have a lot more to learn. AI is changing every day. And I think we have a lot more to learn before we are even going to be in a steady enough state to make the right policy. So to me, an intervention is still trying. And I think it sends a signal that, look, we're not trying to end up in economic development disaster here. We're trying to keep people in jobs, and I think that's really good. I think that companies can focus a lot more on how do we reallocate the efforts of people to things that are more strategic if we have these agents to do things that are more manual. So I think it's a good step.
Over here.
So my name's Chloe. I work in product marketing, so I'm a typical SaaS product marketer, so that's why I'm here. And I don't think you quite answered the question, how are we seeing the end of software as a service as we know it today?
I mean, I don't want to say we're seeing the end of it. I can talk about this all day. Let me try to summarize 2 quick points. The first point is that I think we're moving from software being a system of record into software being a system of action. And I think if people are not making that switch, then they're going to be left behind. But I don't think that's the end of SaaS. I think that's just a new iteration of it. My second point is that in a world, this is kind of how I say it to my team, we used to sell a software in which the clients did their work. Now we sell a software that does work itself. And so at that point, you start to converge with selling outcomes instead of selling software. And that reminds us all more of a services company. You know, you buy a service, you buy an outcome. And that's okay. That's completely okay. And so I think those points together bring us to saying, you know, SaaS is moving towards outcomes. I actually think we're going to kind of be better for it because it's a higher bar and you have to deliver it with trust.
So you said that your pipeline, this compliance pipeline, is fully run by agentic AI. Where's the human in this? Where are the agents getting audited?
You mean from the perspective of when we deploy?
Yes.
Yes. Great question. There's a few things. Humans are always in there to make the decisions, right? So when we think about that, use that example about risk. The humans were previously spending time basically hoping to catch risk. What I mean by that is, you know, hoping to catch moments of, I should say, risk exposure is what how I actually say it. And now they're instead flipping to being able to address the risks that get raised by AI. That's work that AI can't do. Going back to like what does not scale, AI can't then solve the problem unless it's a quick, you know, configuration on or off, but it's usually not. It's a multifaceted, difficult human problem to solve, and only humans can do that. So that's one. Love your question about who audits the AI. It's very meta for me to say this, but like compliance audits the AI, like as in not compliance with a Y, compliance with an I. You know, like that's the point. You go through these audits to actually, like that's what we all do. All tech companies go through audits to make sure that your product is actually safe and secure and acting on certain principles. So there's been new standards that have come out, like ISO 42001 or AIUC1, which are actually built to test your AI and how good it's doing.
Richa, thank you for sharing your knowledge. I'm Jia Tanki, founder of Alchemy Machines. Just to follow on from that question, in addition to the human in the loop, are you mixing a deterministic approach for mapping out workflows with the agentic layer, or are you sort of beyond the human in the loop? Are you using some other hybrid approach, or is it purely agentic?
Great question. So especially when you're working with enterprises, and especially when you're working in such a nuanced topic as GRC and compliance, you need to make sure that your client can trust the output. And that means that a fully agentic workflow is always going to be non-deterministic and therefore can't be trusted to 100.000%, right? It might be 99.999, but it's not 100.00. And so we have to retain elements of determinism in that workflow through guardrails on the AI, reduced context that basically assures certain outputs, as well as just using automation in certain places, not agentic features, to make sure that they're getting like very clear, you know, point A to point B. Even if the route might look different based on the agent, they're still getting to point B. But that's a really good question. Thank you.
Okay, we have got time for maybe one more question. Go.
Hi there. So it feels like a conversation I have at home because my wife also works in compliance. Sometimes we have a chat about these things. So what we were chatting about, and I'm really curious to hear your take on this, July 6th or 16th, I'm not aware of the date, but there's an EU AI Act that's coming into force. So I guess 2 subtopics to this question. Do you think organizations are going to have their AI compliance departments as they have for privacy or for other areas in the future? Because I know it doesn't exist today in 99% of the companies. And the other one is, how do you think, how serious is this EU AI Act is going to be taken, and what opportunities do you think it rises for other companies out there?
Oftentimes when compliance changes come via regulation, like through the EU AI Act, they go to the legal department instead of the compliance department, which is just an interesting thing that happens. Legal almost becomes the translator. They take the regulation code or text and they kind of translate it into things that the company needs to do. And that's the point where the compliance team almost picks up the baton. And that's interesting. I don't know that that's how it should be, but that's just sort of how it has been. And what's interesting is that in that process, you often kind of, I'm going to use the word lose a little bit of the compliance side of things, and you end up being kind of following the letter of the law, which is good, of course, and we need to, but there's a lot more behind it. I'm going to use GDPR as an example. If you read the GDPR text, which I have done, it's actually quite vague, right? Because it's about the spirit of each of those controls. And a GRC person interprets that very differently than a legal person. A legal person interprets it in a way that actually creates more, I think, weight and almost baggage for the organization versus like a more pragmatic, kind of practical compliance view on it. Not to say that either is bad, that's just different. And so I think that that's kind of what's going to happen with the EU AI Act. I feel like it's going to feel very heavy when I think it's meant to be more guiding. And I do think that, honestly, there are a lot of things that will still need to be improved in it. I've read it, and I think that, I just think that the pace of AI is changing so fast that, as I said before, like policies are almost right now a good stepping stone, but we've not become steady state enough to understand everything that's required.
Okay, last two questions. We'll keep them brief, and the answers. Okay.
Yeah, what's your favorite AI tool that you're using at the moment that people might not have heard of and that is really having an impact for you?
That's such a good question. There's a couple niche ones, but I need to look them up more to be able to openly kind of like endorse them. So I won't. There's a couple of GTM tools that I'm using though that I just love. So I'm going to be a little bit lame and default to saying that, Claude is just my favorite LLM and I use it every single day.
Okay, last one.
Where are your negative feedback loops? What happens if you get it wrong, and who's accountable?
Yeah, from an AI perspective.
From a compliance perspective.
Oh, from a
if
compliance
the policy
perspective.
that you create, if things slip through the net, whose fault is it?
That's interesting because we don't really see it that way. Like in the sense that the way that we've built our agents, the infrastructure that we've built, and the prompts that we've used, and sort of the guardrails that we've built, it's almost like we have near zero, I would say, chance of it being quote unquote wrong from a compliance perspective. I think that what's important is that there's approvals built in. So what we've done with our AI agents is that they can't even finalize something unless they get a human approval. And we communicate to our clients that it's more than human in the loop. It's like judgment required, right? Like human judgment required, must have. And so you kind of put the responsibility on the client because it needs to apply to them in the right way. And that's versus like the AI won't be wrong from a compliance perspective. At least we haven't seen anything like that. Amazing.
Right. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much to Richa Kaul for coming to Pathfounders. Thank you very much to our sponsors, Nebius and Halkin. And we'll hope you join us for another Pathfounders podcast soon.